Welcome to my channel. In this video, we'll be delving into a story that shocked America. The story of Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell. A story where horrific crimes changed an entire community. Join me as we uncover the truth. In 2015, in Rexburg, Idaho, a small town nestled among vast fields and verdant mountains, Chad Daybell and his wife, Tammy, began a peaceful life. Chad, a man with deep-set eyes, was the author of numerous books focused on the end of the world. His theories seemed to contain both fear and hope, a strange mix that attracted many, including Lori Vallow, a woman from Arizona. During her long, lonely nights, Lori found in Chad's books an explanation, a purpose she had long sought. 3 years later, Lori and Chad met at a conference. Their eyes locked as if two souls had found each other again after centuries of being lost. Chad called Lori a sexual goddess, a title as alluring as it was ominous. In Lori's heart, the belief and admiration for Chad quickly turned into blind devotion. Both believed they were destined to gather 144,000, preparing for the second coming of Christ. For Lori, this was not just a sacred mission, but also an escape from a life she felt suffocated by. In February 2019, Charles Vallow, Lori's husband, noticed a strange change in his wife. Lori began talking about the impossible, such as being the reincarnated wife of Joseph Smith, the founder of Mormonism. Charles, with worry evident in every gesture, felt like he was losing the woman he had once loved. During long, sleepless nights, he pondered his family's future, but ultimately decided to file for divorce and seek a protection order. In July 2019, he was shot and killed by Alex Cox, Lori's brother. The house where the incident occurred was filled with a cold silence, as if it too felt the tragedy that had just taken place. Lori, with a blank expression, left Arizona with her children and moved to Idaho, where Chad was waiting. In October 2019, as maple leaves began to turn bright red and golden, signaling the arrival of a chilly autumn, Tammy Daybell, a woman used to the peace and warmth of family life, suddenly faced a nightmare. On a moonless night, as she stepped outside to get the mail, a dark figure suddenly appeared before her, face covered with a bizarre mask. The man didn't say a word, just held up what Tammy thought was a paintball gun, then disappeared as quickly as he had appeared, leaving her with fear spreading through her body. Though she tried to reassure herself that it was just a cruel joke, deep down, Tammy felt a sense of foreboding. She told her friends about the incident, but no one could have imagined that it was merely a harbinger of a tragedy to come. 10 days later, on a strangely quiet morning, Tammy didn't wake up. Her death, initially declared to be from natural causes, sowed a sense of unease in everyone's heart. Chad, the husband she had been with for nearly 30 years, remained calmly stoic, refusing to allow an autopsy, an action that caused suspicion among Tammy's loved ones to grow. You don't get married weeks after you just buried your wife of almost 30 years. You just don't do that, said Samantha Gwilliam, Tammy's sister, unable to hide her outrage and grief at Chad's unusual behavior. Less than 2 weeks after Tammy's funeral, Chad and Lori held a strange wedding in Hawaii, where the sparkling golden sands and the rhythmic sound of the waves could not mask the gloom and mystery surrounding them. They exchanged vows under the bright sunlight, but their eyes showed no joy, but something cold and frightening, making those who attended feel uneasy and suspicious. At the same time, in another place, tensions were also rising. An unidentified gunman, hiding inside a Jeep registered to Charles Vallow, fired shots at Brandon Boudreaux as he was on his way home from the gym in Gilbert, Arizona. The bullet missed his head by mere inches. A stroke of luck, but also a haunting event, leaving Brandon shocked. He knew he had escaped death by the skin of his teeth, but he couldn't understand why he had become a target. At the time, Brandon was in the process of finalizing his divorce from his wife, Melanie Pulowski, Lori's niece. He recalled that Melanie had changed strangely after spending time with Lori and her religious group earlier in the summer, and then suddenly asked for a divorce. According to information from Fox 10 in Arizona, investigators now believe that Alex Cox, Lori's brother, may have been the shooter in this incident, and that Lori had identified Brandon as a dark spirit who needed to be eliminated. The strange events did not stop there. Soon after, in November 2019, when police responded to a request from family members, they questioned Lori about the whereabouts of her daughter, Tylee. The last time Tylee was seen alive was in September of that year. But Lori, after withdrawing her children from school, insisted that they were in Arizona with a family friend, Melanie Gibb. However, when the police contacted Melanie, she completely denied this information. The truth began to emerge, and suspicions about Lori grew. The disappearance of Tylee and Joshua, a 7-year-old boy who was always full of life, created a void filled with pain in the hearts of those who loved them. The bright days of Tylee, the girl with eyes as luminous as a summer sky, and JJ, the boy with a smile as radiant as the sun, were engulfed by a dark abyss. Tylee, who always held a yearning for a bright future, had departed forever. The eyes that once greeted the dawn now remain only a painful memory. Her body was incinerated, the remains merely charred pieces of cloth and ashes buried deep in the earth, leaving an unhealing wound in the hearts of those who loved her. JJ, who once illuminated the world with his smile, had also left the loving embrace of everyone. The memories of the boy tightly hugging his sister, the clear laughter echoing as he played in the yard, now remain only an unfillable void. JJ's small body was found curled up in a plastic bag, cold and alone beneath the earth. Deprived of bedtime stories and warm embraces from loved ones, JJ departed, taking with him a whole world of innocence and endless joy. When the first rays of morning light shone upon the garden behind the house, the earth seemed to cry out in its own pain. The discovery of the children's bodies was a living nightmare. 2 shallow graves, hastily and carelessly dug like scars on the surface of the earth, revealed a horrific secret that no one wanted to confront. Within those graves lay the bodies of Tylee and JJ, the children who were once everyone's angels, now victims of a savage crime. Those who witnessed it could not contain their emotions. The trembling hands of the searchers, the choked-back tears, and the rising rage surged like a blazing fire. The children who were symbols of life and love were now just proof of an unforgivable atrocity. No one could understand why these little angels had to endure such a painful fate. After long days of confusion and suspicion, the truth about Tammy Daybell's death was finally revealed. Her body, the woman once known for her kindness and warmth, was exhumed. Crowds gathered outside the cemetery, each carrying their own pain. They waited, silent and anxious, some praying, others holding their hands tightly, their fingers trembling, and in their eyes, the struggle between hope and despair was evident. When the autopsy results were released, silence blanketed the entire space. The initial claims of a natural death had completely collapsed. Tammy Daybell, the woman believed to have died in her sleep, had been murdered. Her throat had been strangled, a brutal and inhuman act. This horrifying truth hit the people of Idaho like a punch to the gut, shaking the entire community and fueling their outrage. The whispers of terror, the sorrowful headshakes, and the tears running down people's faces were clear evidence of the pain they were enduring. News spread like wildfire, sweeping through every small street, every home, and every heart. The grief for Tammy, the sympathy for her children, and the outrage against those who had committed the crime, all merged into one intense emotion, like a fire blazing, demanding that justice be done. Meanwhile, Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell, the suspects and those who were hated, could no longer hide from the eyes of the public. They were surrounded by the outrage of thousands of people, those who had previously been neighbors, friends, or acquaintances. The artificial calmness on their faces could no longer hide the cruel truth they had inflicted. The lies, the cover-ups, and the inhumane acts, all were now revealed under the light of justice. Lori and Chad were forced to face justice, and the trial against them became a nationally followed event. The community of Idaho, and all those concerned about the case, waited with an unwavering belief that the truth would prevail, and that the wicked would pay for the crimes they had committed. In May 2021, the whole nation watched as Lori Vallow, and Chad Daybell, the two accused murderers, finally stood before the court. The courtroom became a stage where truth and lies collided, where justice tried to find light in the darkness of crime. Throughout the trial, Lori maintained a terrifyingly calm demeanor, her eyes looking straight ahead, as if everything happening was just a play she didn't want to participate in. She refused to admit guilt, sometimes even looking at the families of the victims with cold eyes, with no trace of remorse. The testimonies of witnesses, the evidence presented, and the tears of the victims' families painted a clear picture of the crimes that Lori and Chad had committed. The cruelty, deceit, and inhumane acts had caused all those present to shudder with horror. In May 2023, Lori's trial came to an end. The sentence was read, and its sound echoed throughout the courtroom. Like an affirmation of justice, Lori Vallow was sentenced to 3 consecutive life sentences, a severe sentence reflecting the brutality of her crimes. But perhaps, even a life sentence could never compensate for the losses she had caused. Furthermore, she continued to face charges for killing Charles Vallow and the attempted murder of Brandon Boudreaux in December 2023, prolonging the days of anguish for their loved ones. As for Chad Daybell, the man who had vowed to stay by Lori's side, the man who had shared her delusions about the end of the world, now had to face subsequent trials in April 2024. His fate also hung on the scales of justice, awaiting final verdicts. The story of Lori Vallow and Chad Daybell is not just a series of gruesome crimes, but also a journey filled with pain and loss, leaving scars that will never heal on the hearts of those involved. It is a story about people who were swept into the vortex of extreme beliefs, where truth and illusion became intertwined, where compassion and humanity were buried beneath a veneer of hollow visions. Innocent children were deprived of the opportunity to grow up, wives were murdered, and families had to endure irreparable loss. But at the same time, this story is also testament to the strength of a small but resilient community, relentlessly searching for truth and demanding justice. This story also serves as a warning to all of us about the danger of blind faith, the cruelty of the human heart, and the importance of protecting the vulnerable from the wicked. The reader can feel the inner turmoil in every action, every word, every gaze of the characters, allowing them to draw their own conclusions about what happened, questions about the truth, about fairness, and about the nature of human beings remain, calling us to reflect and seek answers within our own consciences.